Hi, I'm Kera Weiserbs. Today I'm demonstrating the wide rib cable with beads, a stitch that I designed. This stitch applies the wide rib stitch to the knitting chart for the wide rib cable with beads. This is the looping diagram for the wide rib stitch, which I demonstrated in a previous video. Now I'll explain how to knit the wide rib cable with beads, which is illustrated in the following knitting chart. The knitting chart has two sections, a prep section that identifies how to cast on, a repeat section that specifies the number of rows that form a unit pattern. Peg numbers are on the bottom, and row-specific instructions for each section are numbered on the right. Instructions that apply to both rakes have numbers. Instructions that only apply to one rake are specified by a number, followed by FR for the front rake or BR for the back rake. For example, 1FR refers to row 1 on the front rake. The prep section has one row of open circles. The open circles symbolize weaving a cast-on row around the pegs on both rakes. Recommended cast-on stitches for the wide rib cable with beads include the stockinette stitch, the twisted knit stitch, or the tight zigzag cast-on. Today I'm knitting a 23 stitch wide swatch that alternates between 3 stitch wide columns of the wide rib stitch and 3 stitch wide cables that are formed using the wide rib stitch. The beaded cables are knit on pegs numbers 5, 6, and 7, 11, 12, and 13, and 17, 18, and 19. The first row of the repeat section has rake-specific instructions. The closed circles indicate to weave a row of the wide rib stitch and knit off bottom loops over the top loop. On the front rake, loop every peg, and on the back rake, loop every peg except for the middle stitch in each beaded cable, which is looped twice. This is indicated by the number 2 in front of the closed circle. Note the arrows around the double loop stitches. The arrows point to the catty corner pegs on the opposite rakes and indicate that after knitting off you need to undo the double loops and divide the excess yarn between the catty corner loops on the front rake. I've added peg markers to help me remember which peg needs to be double looped. Next, form a 1-3 rake cross to each beaded cable. That's a rake cross that switches the first and third loop in each triplet. Now I will demonstrate a 1-3 rake cross. On the front rake, add a bead to the middle stitch in each cable triplet. To add a bead to a stitch, tie floss through 2 needles and knot the floss. Remove the loop from the peg and thread the floss through the loop. Add a bead to one of the needles and then pass the bead to the second needle. Push the bead down the loop, remove the floss, and push the bead down to the bottom of the loop. After adding the bead, add an elongated slip stitch by moving the beaded loop to the back rake. The next row has rake-specific instructions. The closed circles indicate that you need to weave the yarn around the pegs and knit off bottom loops over the top loop. However, the middle triplet of each wide-ribbed cable only has 1 loop. Therefore, they cannot be knit off, which is why there are open circles on even-numbered pegs on the front rake. Complete the stitch by knitting another row of the wide rib stitch. Now you're ready to add another row of the wide rib cable stitch with beads.